anti-communism reached a new level when Jokowi became president, because the essentially fascist right-wing candidate that was running against him was one of Indonesia's biggest war criminals, from his command of massacres in East Timor especially, but all sorts of things. Riots against the ethnic Chinese created by the military when this military dictatorship ended. Basically, they basically ran on a platform that Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, is a communist somehow. And that, of course, raises the stakes of anti-communism, raises the relevance of anti-communism. There was a military, there was an attempted coup, I would say, last year, around that was a kind of rolling effort to topple ultimately Jokowi that ended up getting, as you mentioned, the governor of Jakarta thrown in jail on ridiculous blasphemy charges. But I think the essential reason why the future is so uncertain for democracy in Indonesia is something that civil society in Indonesia finds painful to acknowledge and discuss publicly, and that is the continued sovereignty of the military in Indonesia. The people of Indonesia, the elected government in Indonesia, are not sovereign. The military is sovereign. And there's a simple reason. If this were taking place in Indonesia, this screening, and an army general ordered soldiers to come in and kill everyone in this theater, that army general could not be put on trial in a civilian court. The only way that general could face justice is if the army itself decided to court-martial the general, or if through a very labyrinthine process, the parliament were to convene a special human rights tribunal for the crime, something which has never happened fairly or effectively. And in that sense, you have the military, the institution with the greatest capacity and the legal monopoly, essentially, on violence, effectively above the law. And when the military is above the law, they are the law, which is why in 2016, shortly after the Look of Silence was at the Oscars, there was a national symposium held by the Presidential Advisory Council to discuss the first official gathering to discuss the crimes of 1965 between survivors and retired military generals. Afterwards, there was a lot of pushback by the military during the symposium, but afterwards the president actually issued a decree, issued an order, not so formal as a decree, instructing the government to identify the mass graves in Indonesia, to seek them out, identify them, and investigate. The military said, we're not going to do it, and there was no further discussion. And everybody knew that it was a meaningless order, because if the military doesn't want it to happen, it won't happen. Luckily, the military is not only the fascist wing that backs Perppu. It's a little bit more complicated, but ultimately, while democracy to some extent has come to Indonesia, the people in Indonesia are not sovereign. And there will be a serious power struggle that may hopefully take place peacefully and over time to attain sovereignty for the people of Indonesia. And we don't quite know, and the military will push back, and the military will use anti-communism at every step of the way.
I mean, one other part of that, to what extent do you think the civilian, what extent do you think the civilian oligarchy is a major player in this as well? Because as you know, with the recent protests, they were funding it.
They're essential because anybody who's wealthy, who's an oligarch in Indonesia, anyone who's a billionaire in Indonesia became a billionaire through theft and plunder with the support of the military, by paying the military and its associated paramilitary groups the money to do their dirty work, or by paying protection money to the military. And often those are two sides of the same coin. So anybody with wealth, and oligarchic wealth always is political power. Anyone with that kind of wealth and power doesn't want true accountability, doesn't want true popular sovereignty, doesn't want genuine democracy, because they risk having their crimes exposed, they risk having the basis of their wealth and power exposed, and they risk losing everything. So there's a serious conflict, and one that won't be resolved without really patient, and I'm afraid dangerous activism and struggle.